friends. Welcome to the Creative Impact Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Caldwell, and I'm so happy you're here. Each episode, I take some time to chat with fellow artists about life, faith, and the impact of the arts.
If you want to have a voice in the world, you have a voice when you've gone through something, reconciled with something, and have gained peace from that something. And, right? So from that position, you can speak about it because you're not angry, you're not frustrated, you're not resentful, you're not bitter. You've actually pressed through something really hard, some sort of suffering. You've reconciled with it. You've really dealt with it. You've gone through forgiveness. You've gone through self-reflection. You've gone through and you've come to reconcile with where you are. I'm no longer a Rockette. I'm no longer a Rockette, right? Whatever it is. And then you find the peace within that. And once you have peace, then you can move ahead.
I'm so excited to introduce you to today's guest. But before I do, I want to make sure that you know about our upcoming giveaway. This is the last week to enter to win a beautiful calligraphy print from artist Caitlin Harbaugh from episode 8 of the show. The prize will go to one of our email newsletter subscribers. You can subscribe on our website where it says Stay Connected. I'll be announcing the winner on next week's episode. Friends, it was such a gift to connect with Cheryl Cutlip for today's episode. Cheryl is the founding director of the Project Dance Foundation, formed in 2002 as a mission to bring hope and healing to the world through the universal language of dance. Cheryl currently directs the space at Project Dance, as well as the precision dance company, the Carolina Snowbelles. Cheryl began dancing at a young age and decided by the time she was 15 to pursue dance as a professional career. Her life changed dramatically when she put her faith in Jesus early in her performance career. She shares how she grappled with the place of dance in her life, given her newfound faith. Cheryl enjoyed performing with the Radio City Rockettes for 15 years, where her duties included dance captain, assistant choreographer, and spokesperson for nationally televised appearances. We spend some time talking about her life as a Rockette, and Cheryl shares some highlights and fun stories from that season. We get into some deeper conversations as well around what it looks like to grieve the end of your career as a performer. Cheryl gives us a glimpse into the beginnings of the Project Dance events, which began nearly 20 years ago. Since then, the 3-day Project Dance events have taken place in over 26 cities and 13 countries. Cheryl describes how art has an eternal trajectory, and it acts as a bridge that connects people and brings unity. For the artist, the real beauty is experiencing God through the art. Enjoy my conversation with Cheryl Cutlip. I am here with Cheryl Cutlip, and she is the founder of Project Dance and also a former Rockette. And we are super excited to get to hear from you today, Cheryl. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you, Rachel. It's so great to see you. And I'm trying to remember if I met you first or Ben, but then I love that Project Dance has such a cool part of your story too.
Yes, that was one thing I wanted to talk about for sure. I was like, do you know that we met at Project Dance? So,
oh, yes.
You may have met Ben first, I don't know, because he had kind of been around the Project Dance world a while longer than I had, but
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So it's super fun. And people think, because we both went to Project Dance Houston and Project Dance Atlanta that year. And I think people thought we started talking at Project Dance Atlanta, but it was actually Project Dance Houston, which was a few months earlier.
Yes.
And that was kind of where we actually met and started talking. And then in Atlanta, people saw us together a lot. They're like, what's going on with Ben and Rachel?
I love that. That's so great.
So fun. So I'm curious, have there been other people that have met their spouses at Project Dance?
Yes, there have been. Chastity Strickland, who's now married to Sean. Well, she was Chastity Forrester. She met her now husband, and they have 4 kids at Project Dance as well. And then we also actually in New York one year in Manhattan, right in Times Square, we actually had a wedding on stage during Project Dance.
Wow.
And it was a gal who was a dancer, and she and her husband didn't meet at Project Dance, but we actually officiated their wedding on stage.
That is super cool. Yeah, love it how God orchestrates all of that.
Exactly.
So if you would like, can you just share a little bit about who you are and what you're up to right now?
Sure. So a little bit about myself. I live right now in the state that I grew up in. I grew up in North Carolina in the Triad area, kind of like the middle of the state, and ended up in New York by the time I was 20. So I sort of grew up in North Carolina and then spent a lot of my life in New York City and
Mm-hmm.
traveling the world as a dancer. And then moved back to the mountains of North Carolina about 10 years ago, and just grew up training in a very small dance studio. There was one dance studio in my town, and so
Mm-hmm.
that's where I went to. There may have been a couple of studios, but the one that I went to was just right there, right down the street. And she was an amazing teacher, because by the time I was 13, she sort of just kind of pushed me out of the nest and kind of said, I've taught you everything I can teach you, Cheryl, and this is where I'm sending you. And she sent me to Winston-Salem, and I had teachers from the School of the Arts and things like that. But
Mm-hmm.
I always loved dancing. And when I was about 15 years old, I kind of made this internal decision that I was going to pursue dance more seriously,
Okay,
and
gotcha.
not knowing where that would sort of lead. But I sort of dedicated more time to focusing specifically on dance. And actually, my parents sent me on this tour when I was 15 for 8 weeks. I think it was 8 weeks,
Oh,
6 or 8 weeks. And it was during the summer. It was the first time I'd ever flown on an airplane. And it was called Dance Caravan. It was part of the Hockers Dance Convention. And I
mm-hmm.
was a caravan kid. And so,
So fun.
but it was so fun. It was so fun. But it was during that time that my heart and passion for dance really solidified. And I think my
Mm-hmm.
parents knew that I was either going to come home and say, I never want to dance again, because we danced like 8, 10 hours a day, or I was going to just come home and say, this is what I'm doing. And I think that,
Mm-hmm.
that when I came home, it was just very clear, like I was going to dance and stuff like that. So once I had made that decision, I was sort of chomping at the bit. Like, here's
Yeah.
16, here's 17. Okay. And 18, like, I had my first audition and became a dancer at a theme park, and sort of just kind of kept going from there. And so, I guess I could share a little bit about what happened at that point.
Yeah, sure.
I was living in Nashville, Tennessee. That was my first gig.
Mm-hmm.
I was dancing in a show called Spirit of America with Brenda Lee. It was a kind of an
Nice.
Americana country slash show, and
Uh-huh.
it was really fun. I love dancing at a theme park because they kind of continue your training while you're on the job. So I still had so much to learn as a dancer at age 18, and so it was a really good first job.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, it was during that time frame in Nashville that I actually met the Lord.
Really? That's
So
cool.
so my first professional gig, I mean, I'm out of the nest. Like, I leave home, I'm 8 hours from home, and there was another dancer in the show. There were really basically just two female, quote unquote, dance tracks in the show, and everybody else was like a singer, dancer, or a singer. So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, pretty much everything I did on stage, I did with this other dancer, and she was a believer. And, of course, when I met her, I knew something was different about her, and I was very drawn to her. She was just There was something about my friend Leslie that I wanted to emulate her.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be like her. And I remember her, like, kind of inviting me to church and things like that. And I was open to it, right? I was open to it, but I was not, quote unquote, interested. I sort of felt like
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of on my own for the first time, and I was sort of not really sure I wanted to bring any sort of traditional religious upbringing into my new existence, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of how I saw it. But at any point, I did go to church with her, like on a Friday night, and the Lord just sort of met me there in a huge way, like took my life and just went completely upside down with it. I had one of those really transformative sort of salvation experiences
Mm-hmm.
that is not everybody's story, but I think that the Lord just did a deep work in me that night. And I remember sleeping that night thinking, I could just hear angels singing the whole night through, like singing to
Mm-hmm.
me. And I woke up the next day, and I was a completely different person.
Wow.
So here I am in Nashville. I am gung ho on being a professional dancer. and I'm, going to keep going. And then all of a sudden, like, wow, here's Jesus. Like, I cannot unsee this,
Right.
this invasion of my life is so very, very, very real. And so now I've got like, to sort this out. I've got
Mhm.
to sort this out and figure out, am I actually supposed to dance? Because it's all I ever knew. And dance for me was my salvation. Dance was
Mm.
my safe place. It was my rescue. It was my answer. I could share everything through dance, and I could resolve every problem through it. So it really was for me. It was life. Dance was life. So
Mhm.
now here's real life coming my way, right? So
Right. You're like, what do I do now with what I have been
right.
placing that in? Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, Rachel, did I get this all wrong? Like, I have to ask the question now that my life is turned around, is there a place for dance in my life now? And if
Mhm.
so, what is that going to look like?
Right.
And that was a big struggle. That was a big struggle. And so basically what ended up happening is I really didn't have the answers. There
Mhm.
was there was just no like quick and easy, like, you should do this and you shouldn't do that. It was kind of like, okay, I'm sort of confused,
Yeah.
you know.
Uh-huh.
I'm a little bit don't really know, but I'm also a little like, I have a bit of a personality. My personality type is a little bit, I would say, stubborn. It's just I've always been the type of person that I need to learn the hard way. I need to walk it out.
Experience it for yourself kind of thing.
Right. And so I thought, well, until I hear a really big no from like the Lord, who I'm just now getting to hear his voice, I'm going to keep going because this
Right.
is all I know. This is
Yeah.
really all I know. So I did have a moment. I think one of the scariest moments in my entire existence was the moment as I was reading through scripture for the first time, listening to what Jesus was telling his disciples, and now understanding that I'm a disciple.
Mhm.
I could see that, that Jesus was asking the disciples to lay down their lives, to lay down their dreams, to lay down their jobs, to lay down who they are, and to literally lay their lives down and to follow
Wow.
him.
Yeah.
And I remember coming across that like very, very early on there in Nashville. And I really grappled with that because I knew the weight of that. And I knew that if I laid down my dance, that there was nothing else there.
Yeah.
There wasn't anything else to catch me.
Right.
I'm on my own. I'm 18. I've left home. There's sort of no turning back, so to speak. And
Mhm.
yet I'm being asked by the Lord, who I know is real, who just completely impacted, like, show me this amazing love that I had never ever knew even existed. And now I'm being asked to lay it down. And so I remember doing it. I remember I was renting a bedroom from an elderly couple in Nashville. And I remember where I was. I was sitting on the bed with my Bible open, and I just said to Jesus, okay, I'm gonna give you my dance
Mm.
because you're asking me to do this, but I don't know. I have no idea what that would mean tomorrow.
Mhm.
So I sincerely did give it up. And of course I didn't quit my job or anything like that. I just sort of was like, Lord, I'm going to give this to you. Please walk me through what this is going to look like.
Mhm.
What happened, Rachel, over the next few years was really just a journey of walking with the Lord, growing, being discipled by the Lord, but also seeing myself as a dancer continue to grow and to continue to enjoy dancing within, quote unquote, the marketplace. And went
Yeah.
from there to work on a cruise ship, and then went from there to work at Tokyo Disneyland, and then moved to New York and became a Rockette and traveled to Europe. And all of these things were happening, and simultaneously I was also very much growing in my relationship with the Lord. And
Mhm.
so along the way, of course, I started meeting some amazing people who were asking the same questions, honestly.
Mhm. Yeah, what do we do with this? How do
Yeah.
we walk it out? Yeah, for sure. And in a
Yes.
lot of ways, it's very
Yeah.
encouraging to hear that it was like, I don't really know the answers. I'm kind of confused, because I think a lot of times we think we're just going to have it's all going to be lined out in front of us, or we're going to have all the answers in that moment. But really, it is one step at a time for sure. So So it's encouraging in a way to know that that's your
Yeah.
story.
Yeah. And I think it's the grace of God, because I think that the more I walk with the Lord over the years, I realize it is about a relationship. And the Lord loves us so deeply that he's in relationship with us. It's not like you can do this. It's not about the rules. It's not about the handbook. It's about a living, loving relationship where every step we take, we inquire of the Lord. Father, do you
Mm-hmm.
want me to go to this audition? And you don't know what the answer is going to be. It could be yes, it could be no, it could be maybe,
Right.
it could be, I don't know, if you want to,
Mm-hmm.
if you'd
Yeah.
like to go do that, then bless you. And so that can be hard because we really want someone to tell us yes or no, this is right or wrong, or this is what the Lord says, And so
Mm-hmm.
as we walk it out by his spirit, by the Holy Spirit. And he's a great teacher, and he teaches us the way to do things. I remember I felt very strongly working on the cruise ship that the Lord, and moving to New York, the Lord was sort of instructing me on how to take the next steps. For example,
Yeah.
he would say, okay, you're going to move to New York, and you've put me first, keep me first, follow me, right? And consider
Mm-hmm.
me when you get there, continue to consider my ways. And so it wasn't difficult in the sense that you just sort of know that he's always there with you, guiding you. And to be honest, I mean, living
Mm-hmm.
in New York, I think I grew the most as a believer because of how living in a major city and the diversity of a city, and being able to really see yourself as a reflection. When you're in a place like Manhattan, whew, everything is in front of you, and yet you are making all of these really important decisions about your
Mm-hmm.
lifestyle and your career and things like that. So the biggest help in New York was my pastor at the time, who's Tim Keller from Redeemer Church.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so being in his church for over 10 years, and actually he's the one who really was able to. It wasn't until I moved to New York and got really rooted in Redeemer that I actually did find some very tangible instruction about faith and the arts. And that was such a relief to finally find someone like Tim, who was able to speak into the uniqueness of the arts and faith,
Yeah.
and help to walk it out. He
Right.
wasn't afraid to say that dance is valid, dance is beautiful, dance is needed, and he very much celebrated the arts and gave.
Mm-hmm. Which it can be rare in the
Yeah,
church, so
yeah,
that's exciting.
yeah, and he sort of came around, the idea. And I mean, and I just started asking these questions, and sort of how Project Dance was sort of birthed out of really all of these questions that we as dancers and people of faith have. I remember sitting down with him one day and just saying, hey, I'm still really sort of confused. Like, here I am, I'm a Rockette. I'm doing 18 shows a week. I'm coming to your church on, like, forget what it was. It was like and it wasn't Sunday morning, right? Because we had shows, but it was like he would have off times, like a certain evening we would go, and I'm coming to your church at this time, and and I'm really
Mm-hmm.
wanting to follow, the Lord. And he just sort of, it's so interesting because he's Tim, right? He just sort of very eloquently and quickly was like, well, Cheryl, dance is valid in three areas. It's valid as work, it's valid as worship, and it's valid as a witness. And I just remember sitting there
Mm.
going, aha, because, you just
Yeah.
sort of think to yourself, like, I'm definitely very much called to this marketplace of dance, this vocational arena of dance. And because there's not a lot talked about it in the faith circles, we sort of, I think the faith circles sort of separate and say, here's the entertainment industry over here somewhere, and then here's the
Mm-hmm.
church over here somewhere. And we sort of talk about them as if they never coexist.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as an artist in the marketplace, that sent me into even more confusion, because it was like there wasn't necessarily an understanding or acceptance that there was an interflow of human beings within all of these realms, you know.
Right.
So Tim really helped and navigate that. And from that, we sort of were able to springboard off into sharing that with other dancers through things like Project Dance.
Wow. Yeah. That's super great to have someone that could speak into your life and kind of walk that with you a little bit, you know? Yeah. So cool. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your time as a Rockette and what was like a day in the life when you were a Rockette.
So day in the life of the Rockettes, it was such an incredibly fun time in my life. I've been retired for 12 years, but it's just I look back on that big chunk of time, and I mean, you would start the first thing you do. You wake up in the morning. You make sure that you try to figure out where your body is. You sort of move all the bones and muscles and sort of figure out, okay, what's
Hmm.
today going to look like? And you make sure, you eat well, right, in the morning. You're at work starts at like 10. You're there by no later than 9:30 to get settled in and stuff like that. This would be a rehearsal day. You go
Yeah.
up to the large rehearsal hall, you're stretching, you're getting ready at 10 o'clock. You know, you need to be fully ready to dance full out by 10. So there's no sort of easing into the day as a Rockette. Once you're sort of on the clock, you're in heels and you're going full out.
Gotcha.
You
Okay. So you
know,
kind of had to warm yourself up ahead of time and
right. And then there's like an hour for lunch, and then you're back at it till about 6 o'clock, 5, 6,
oh,
depending on the
wow.
day. And it's sort of like rinse and repeat, right? Every day, especially when you're rehearsing. And then, of course, when you're doing shows, that looks a little different, obviously, because you're on a different
Hmm.
schedule. But
How many shows did you have in a given week? Would you
uh,
say?
so
Guess it
I think
depends
it's
on the
like,
season,
yeah,
but
I think it's for Christmas. I'm thinking it's like 18 shows a week.
wow.
So, they're 90-minute shows, and you have, a minimum of 2 shows a day, maximum of 4 or 5 shows a day. And you're split between two different companies. So there's two full companies of Rockettes and cast and crew
Hmm.
and everything. And it switches. So you have your daytime folks, and then you have your evening. And so there'll be like a day in the week where you give that entire crew a day off. So you're there for the full day doing four shows,
Okay,
and
gotcha.
they give you a day off
Yeah,
type thing.
that's super cool. I got to travel with the dance team that I direct to New York right before coronavirus shut everything down.
Okay.
So we were there literally like March 4th through 7th.
Oh, wow.
So it was probably about a week before they shut down Broadway and everything. And we got to go to Radio City Music Hall and take the tour and go see the studio. And it was one of my favorite parts of the trip, actually. And got
Nice.
to take a class with the former Rockette. And
Aw.
yeah, so super
Yeah,
fun.
I mean, the building is so amazing, the history that's at Radio City, and being able to walk through those halls and think about the people who have gone before us and shared in
Hmm.
that experience.
And even like the wood floors in the dance studio, like, wow, how many people have danced here? It's so cool.
Yes, absolutely.
So, when did Project Dance start to come about in your time in New York?
So Project Dance started, during my time early on as a Rockette. I sort of was watching what women were doing when they retired, and Radio City has this incredible program where they will send you to school and pay for it while you're a Rockette. So that
Oh,
was
that's neat.
it was one of the amazing benefits of the program, and so I took full advantage of it and actually went to seminary. Radio City paid for me to go to seminary, which was amazing.
That's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, and because I really was passionate and interested in learning more about my faith and as it related to the arts, and so I was taking courses related specifically to faith and the arts. And through that experience and just recognizing that while New York and Radio City and the Broadway community and the performing arts community was very rich and very vibrant, and producing and presenting beautiful works,
Hmm.
because all of us were so busy doing that, like doing those 18 shows a week, and really that machine was moving, right? Broadway, everything, that I would
Right.
found that the artists within that world were somewhat not deprived, but just didn't have time to really nurture their spiritual lives. And
Hmm.
there was this desire to do that, this desire to make room for faith. And so I just started talking to other artists, and it really started just with asking questions and finding other friends like me who wanted to talk about these ideas. And as part of my own spiritual journey, I would go to Texas, where you live. I would come down to
Yeah.
Texas, like back in the early mid 90s, to go to Audeum Summer Intensive. And I would spend,
Oh, yeah.
I would make sure that even if I had Rockette shows going or I was touring, that I would ask for that week off so that I could go and be with other dancers who were really seeking the Lord.
Mm-hmm. Just
And
kind of filled up.
yeah, and it really
Yeah.
became so significant. It became so significant that because, like you said, Rachel, it would fill me up, and I would have to make that last for a year.
Wow.
Do you know
Yeah,
what I mean?
that's true.
You know, like
Because
you
then you're
go,
just going, super
yeah.
busy. Yeah.
So what I found is that people like myself that there were just more dancers starting to open up about their faith and wanting to integrate it and wanting to learn how. And I remember it was such a dichotomy because I would go to New York and do Rockette, see all this amazing stuff. And then I would go to Houston and I would see Randy Flynn's dance company perform. And I could just sit and watching the company and I would just weep. I would cry and cry and cry and cry and cry. And I would think, this is so beautiful. This is beautiful beyond a paycheck. This is, beautiful beyond a stage that holds 6,000 people. There's something about this that the world needs to see, because this is movement that, it's movement that is changing lives. And so I thought, this is what New York needs, right? And so I thought, I just want to bring some of friends like Randy's dancers. I want to bring some friends that I've met together to New York, and I want to build a stage in the middle of Times Square, and I want to pour out this beautiful movement. I want to see this wash over this city because New York is so hungry for it. New York needs it, and New York is so welcoming and receiving to the arts. The arts just speak to New York City because it's such an artistic hub. And so I knew that it would be a language that would penetrate the city and would be welcome. And I knew that if Randy's dancers came, that beauty would pour out over the stage and onto the people. I knew it would. And so I was like, okay, let's do this event. And it just happened to be around the time that our city was suffering because we had just experienced the events of 9/11. And the city was sort of already on the brink of hopelessness and despair. And so, as you know, dance just has a way of speaking to the deprivation of our soul.
For sure.
Yeah. And so I thought, this is the time, right?
Yeah.
This is the time. And so thanks to my husband, Ron, who was able to navigate the permitting process through the city, which was a big undertaking.
I bet. Yeah.
Yeah. Just to get the city to close off Times Square for 10 hours. That's a big ask, right? I mean, the city that never sleeps and you're asking for Times Square for an entire Saturday.
Exactly.
But God just opened the doors. I mean, there's so many amazing testimonies about that first year of God just opening the door. And we put that stage right in the middle of Times Square. And for 10 hours, one dance after another was presented to just literally bring hope to New York City. And it was really just, honestly, we were just doing this to do this once. We just wanted to do this, never thinking that we would, ever do it again. I mean, because, the day was over and it was like, okay, tomorrow's Sunday. Oh, right. I've got 3 shows, So
yeah,
it wasn't, these were just professional dancers coming together to do this one-time thing. And it was so impactful and it was so different. We just kind of, I remember I had like 6 of my Rockette friends open the first show that very first year.
Oh,
and
cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Natalie Lewis, a dear friend of mine, she choreographed a Latin piece on a few Rockettes and they opened the show and we still talk about it. Like even within our Rockette sisterhood, we still talk about that performance. I mean, we could talk about, dancing for the president or, we could talk about, all these amazing things that we did as Rockettes. But when we get together, we're like, gosh, you remember that year we did Project Dance? And it was just something different about it. And it was so beautiful. And it sort of did put the period at the end of a lot of sentences that we had. We're like, this is great. And I'll never forget, there was this little, probably 12-year-old girl. She comes up to me right in the middle of Project Dance. She's soaked it poured down rain that whole day.
Oh, man.
She's soaking wet. And she looks up at me and she just said, when are we doing this again?
Aww.
And
that's so cool.
I had a big smile on my face because of all my media training, right? You never look at a little
right.
kid and show if you're terrified. You never ever show it. And so I just smiled at her and I said, honey, I don't know. But in my mind, I was thinking, we're never doing this again, because all I could think was, it's pouring down rain. We're
Mm-hmm.
basically slipping and sliding all over the deck. And this was the hardest thing I've ever pulled together or put together. I don't think I'll ever have the energy to ever do this again.
Right.
I'm
Which
so
is
glad
awesome
it's
looking back now.
almost over. But because Project Dance was truly birthed out of faith, honestly, it really was. I know that sounds cliche, but it took so much to birth that. It took so much
Mm-hmm.
prayer and so much faith that I truly did not think that we would ever do it again. It just was this
Mm-hmm.
moment in time. And after all these years, I mean, now this will be celebrating our 20th year coming up soon.
Wow.
And we've been to now over 26 cities and 13 countries, and
Mm-hmm.
it's sort of exploded. And but when I look back and I think to myself, the mission and the vision, it's exactly the same as it was the very first day. And that is
That's
just
beautiful.
it hasn't changed. It's just the whole idea and the essence is, let's bring some dancers together who want to share their dance and their heart and their message to people in this open forum where you don't have to buy a ticket, you don't have to sit in a theater. You can just happen upon a stage somewhere in the world, and dancers are there just to give of themselves and to bless the city. And so we're still doing that.
Right. Yeah, that's still definitely the heart. And my experience is being there and getting to be a part of it. Have you heard of FaithBox? FaithBox is a monthly box subscription that helps you grow in your faith. Each box includes spiritually enriching devotionals, Christian books by your favorite authors, and exclusive eco-friendly products that do good for their community. Each Faith Box is built around a unique theme to help you live your faith values every day. To learn more about FaithBox, check out creativeimpactpodcast.com/faithbox. Now back to my conversation with Cheryl. So at that point, how many more years were you a Rockette following that first Project
So,
Dance?
okay, so that was in 2002 was the first one, and I retired in 2008. So,
Okay, cool. So yeah, pretty good chunk of time still after that.
mhm.
So what was one of your, just to go back a little bit, what was one of your most exciting moments as a Rockette?
Yeah, most exciting moment as a Rockette. I think the first memory as a Rockette that pops in my mind that was my most favorite was when Radio City in 1999, they had restored Radio City Music Hall. They did a full complete restoration of
Mm-hmm.
Radio City. And when that happened, and when we reopened the doors, we did a big celebration show. And it was called like the grand reopening of Radio City. And it was
Mm-hmm.
televised and it was a big deal. And I was in the right place at the right time in that I got to dance with Liza Minnelli on stage.
Oh,
And she is just one of I love her. I love her voice, and she's just so incredible. I've always enjoyed her. And to see her on that
yeah.
stage with us behind her dancing to Take Me Back to Manhattan, and there she's singing it live,
Oh,
right? And it was just, and rehearsing with her and just being a part of that experience. It was sort of like being a part of history, you
right.
know? And so that was probably one of my all-time favorite memories.
That's such a neat memory. And then you did a lot of choreography as well, right? And
Yeah, so
helping
yeah, I mean,
with rehearsals and
over
stuff.
the years, I did. I mean, I sort of started out and kind of went through the ranks, started out on the line, and started out, and then was a swing and dance captain, and just I kept growing there, which was such a gift because it was just grace. It was just a gift to be able
Mm-hmm.
to continue to grow. But eventually, I was asked to choreograph, and as I'll never forget the first thing I choreographed. It was really kind of funny. We were doing like some shows. We were already working on probably Christmas actually, and
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't a part of that creative team at that time. I was just there as a Rockette, and my director said the Yankees had just won the pennant, so it was like we were invited, the Rockettes were invited to City Hall for the pennant parade, Yankee pennant parade. And we
Oh,
needed to
yeah.
perform. And so she she was like, Cheryl, I need you to choreograph something for City Hall for the parade. And I was like, yay, okay. And so she
Yeah.
said, here's the deal. You don't get a rehearsal. There's no rehearsal for your choreography. You're going to get on the bus in the morning and you're going to teach the choreography on the bus to the women on the way down to City Hall. So
Wow.
I know. So I was like, do I really want to do this? I don't know. But I was like, yes, I have to say yes. If I don't say yes to this opportunity to choreograph for the Rockette, I might not get asked again.
Right.
So we got on the bus and the bus is like rocking and rolling and moving around. And I'm at the front with the microphone, like the tour guide, except for I'm teaching choreography to the women. And I mean, these Rockettes, they were just so fabulous. They got it. They got out of the bus. We got on stage. We did the routine without ever rehearsing.
Wow.
Yep.
That is super impressive.
I was like, thank you, ladies. Coffee on me for everybody.
Right, exactly. That's so incredible.
Yeah, so that was kind of like the first, I felt like I was being refined by the fire, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then it went, I got a little more comfortable and was able to do some other things and ended up being asked to choreograph a brand new Rockette routine for a show that was being conceived called Out of Line. And the show never made it to the stage, but we did, like, for example, we did a really amazing jazz piece. Carrie Quinn choreographed. She was a Rockette as well. She choreographed this Fosse-esque chair jazz dance that was really out of the box. And then I was asked to choreograph a tap piece. And so I did a piece called Thunder. It was total percussion. We danced with actual drums in our hands. And it was very different. Pilavolus came through and set a 12-minute work on mixing the style of Rockettes with the Pilavolus technique.
Whoa.
And
that would be a cool fusion.
Yeah, it was just exactly that, Rachel. It was total fusion and it was like 12 minutes long. And there were all of these pieces. And the idea was to show that the Rockettes were out of line, that they didn't always just have to be in this perfect precision kick line, but that we could highlight some of the other, talents of the Rockettes and show some more diverse works.
That sounds like a lot of fun. Thanks for sharing some of those memories. It's just cool to hear about. And so now I guess you said 2008 was when you retired from Rockettes.
Yes, I was pregnant with Evan. I have Ava. She's now in high school, and then I was pregnant with Evan at the time. And I thought it had been 15 years. I was getting ready to have my second child, and I thought, this is the time, and actually I thought 5 years earlier was the time. And the Lord was like, I need you here 5 more years. And I just thought, I was like, I don't think my body can do it physically. I don't think I can.
Yeah.
But that's what he said. And literally 5 years later, I found myself retiring. But yeah, so 2008, I had been there 15 years.
Yeah. So what was that transition like for you, going from professional dancer, so many hours a week, and then transitioning into what was next for you and teaching? And I'm not exactly sure what you did right after that, actually.
So, well, because it was probably one of the low points of and it shouldn't have been, because here I was having babies and it should have really been like this blissful transition. But because all I knew was like being that professional Rockette, what that required for so many years, when that was not a part of the equation any longer, I was lost. I just was. And I wasn't expecting that, because here I am, a believer, faithful, following the Lord, and really had learned about how to put my identity into Christ. But yet unknowingly, my identity was interwoven within this value of being a Rockette, saying I was a Rockette, other people saying you're a Rockette. And I had inadvertently placed wrongly too much value on that within my personal identity. And not to say there's anything wrong. I mean, being a Rockette the Rockettes are world famous, and it's so fun. And it was probably the best career experience I could have ever had.
Right.
But it's not, I think the moment you allow something that isn't eternal to carry you, it can only carry you for so long. And then It
That's a
no
good
longer,
point.
yeah, it just, it doesn't have the wherewithal to carry the weight of our true soul and our being and our value. And so it was hard. I actually had to go to counseling for it because, and I just was not the type to go to counseling for anything,
Mm-hmm.
but I was really lost. And I remember for the first year when I was not living in New York and not dancing with the Rockettes, people would ask me, just people like my friends or whatever, hey, like I was here in Boone and brand new to Boone, and I would meet people for the first time, and they would be like, "So tell me," and I'm like, "Oh, I live in New York. Like I'm from New York. Like it was so bad I couldn't
Yeah.
even claim that I lived in another state. Like
Yeah. That's
so
funny.
I could just tell that I needed some counseling, and there was this amazing pastor, Dave Whitehead, sat down with me and he said, "Cheryl, you serve a God of promotion." And I was like, let me let that sink in.
Mm-hmm.
And what he was basically saying is, you serve this amazing God who is about promoting his children. He's not about demoting you. And because I was feeling demoted for sure,
Yeah. Yeah. Because
you
you've kind of
know,
had, in the eyes of maybe the world or society, in a sense, it feels like you're stepping out of something like that. Yeah. I could see how that would feel that way.
yes, yes. And so we worked through it, and but I think a lot of dancers who either retire or shift from one type of dance career to another, or shift from performing to teaching. I know that we don't talk a lot about that grieving process, but you're not just grieving the work you did on stage, you're sort of all of a sudden identifying with the very real truth that you won't do this forever.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at that, no matter who you are, no matter how faithful you are, no matter how much the truth you know about eternal life and that you will have a new body in heaven, because we will, and we'll dance gloriously on better stages forever. No matter how much you know that, there's a very real physical, there's a very real physical identification with what you will no longer be able to do at the bar, or what you will no longer be able to feel when you fly across stage, and you come face to face with that, and you have to do something about it. You know, you
Mm-hmm.
you you have to go through what that is, and you can, in order to get to the other side. It's sort of like, if you want to have a voice in the world, you have a voice when you've gone through something, reconciled with something, and have gained peace from that something.
Oh,
And
yeah.
right, so from that position you can speak about it, because you're not angry, you're not frustrated, you're not resentful, you're not bitter. You've actually pressed through something really hard, some sort of suffering. You've reconciled with it. You've really dealt with it. You've gone through forgiveness. You've gone through self-reflection. You've gone through, and you've come to reconcile with where you are. I'm no longer
Yeah.
a Rockette. I'm no longer a Rockette, right? Whatever it is. And then you find the peace within that. And once you have peace, then you can move ahead,
Mm. That's
then you can talk
beautiful.
about it.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just one of those things in life where, for me, it wasn't just about the essence of being a Rockette. It was about having worked my entire life from the age I was 15, like, go, 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 and then realizing that this transition after 15 years, that this transition is different, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not that. And actually, it's really funny because I actually have been on stage since I retired, but it just was something I had to deal with at that moment in my life, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's something that, like you said, we don't talk about very much in the dance world or in the performing arts, I guess. And when you step out of those roles, and I think that's super important to actually go through that grieving process. And like you said, go through it and not just try to avoid it, or ignore it, but to actually work through the hard process of reconciling with it. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that with
yeah,
us. I think.
yeah, and it was great to hear Dave Whitehead say, God is a God of promotion. And even though that was a very simple phrase, what it allowed me to do was ask the question, well, then what is God promoting me to? right? So
Yeah.
I thought this was my promotion. I mean, I thought I had been promoted, right? So now let me get this right, because, and so then you start to ask better questions, Lord, what are we doing? Why are we doing what we're doing? And you start to see, like, okay, this is where I want to plant myself. I want to plant myself in the lives of other people who are like-minded, and with everything going on in the world today, like with the fact that we live, we're living in a pandemic time, we're living in a time of a lot of just disunity. And I
Mm-hmm.
know that for me, and everybody has to go at this in their own way, and everybody has a different calling and purpose, and that's what makes life beautiful. But for me, it was like project dance and presenting these eternal truths through an art form like dance. That's what I'm passionate about, because to me, it supersedes some of the things that we're facing today, and it will press through for the good into these hard places, because we don't need band-aids on the times that we live in. We need something that's really, really going to be steadfast through,
Mm-hmm.
a situation. And so far, there hasn't been anything else that has impassioned me as much as Project Dance, because I'm able to link arms with other people that are doing this, and I'm able to see the blessing and the fruit of the work that we're doing,
Right.
and that there's so much work still to do.
Yeah, exactly. That there's more people to reach, more people to bring hope. And so, what are the different? I know it's not only just the dance performances anymore, that it's grown from that. So, what are all the different elements of Project Dance now?
So the Project Dance events are 3 days long, and they're modeled after the life of Bezalel. And I say that to say, through the course of the 3 days, we sort of look at, and we don't really talk about this a lot of Project Dance, but there's a teaching aspect, right? So we look at
Mm-hmm.
what Bezalel did. He taught his art craft, he taught his art form, he performed it, right? And he grew in wisdom and understanding. And so through these 3 days, we really want to feed into artists, all of the aspects that they will need and utilize as an artist. So they take class. There's a whole day where they just train, and they just taking class, like from 10 to
Yeah.
4, ballet, tap, jazz, modern. You're just training, and there's a whole day at the beginning on the usually it's on a Friday when we come together initially, where we're really just connecting. It's a lot of connecting and networking and meeting other people and seeing what dance looks like in the city that we're in, whether it's New York or Hong Kong or Sydney, Australia, really examining the dance world in that city. And so that we can see, if I want to dance if I want to go dance in Kansas City, these are the people doing it. And so we try to
Mm-hmm.
introduce, the dancers who come to what's happening in the dance world in that city. And then, of course, usually the Saturday, and I say usually because in Asia and other countries, sometimes we reverse the days, but
Gotcha. Gotcha.
yeah, but that centerpiece is the performing aspect on stage.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then now in North Carolina, you have also a studio now. Is that right?
Yeah, so Project Dance now has a training facility that's here in Boone in the mountains.
Yeah, that's
And
so cool.
yeah, so it's sort of another program area of Project Dance, but I love it because I just, as a dancer, I think you can probably relate, Rachel, but I
Hmm.
just think most dancers love being in the studio,
Yeah, it's true. There's something special
you
about it.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love the fact that now on a daily basis that we have a studio that we can, we just have that like brick and mortar, aspect of Project Dance where people can come in, take class, be trained, and move out into the world, with their calling.
Yeah.
So operating that is a lot of fun and great faculty. And then of course, kind of partnered with that, I direct a precision dance troupe called the Carolina Snowbelles.
Oh,
And
fun.
it's kind of like everything I learned at Radio City, I'm pouring into a group of young people starting age 10 all the way up. And
Hmm.
I'm utilizing the form of precision dance to teach things like teamwork, right, and discipline, and just some of the life lessons that young people need to do whatever it is they're going to do in their lives. We
Right.
we do that through the company.
That's so cool. I love it. And it's been fun seeing things on social media and, videos and pictures that you posted. I love getting to watch the
Mhm.
journey. So if you, I guess, thinking about people that may be sensing some sort of vision or dream in their own heart, do you have any words of encouragement to people, that maybe at that very beginning stage of, it'd be really cool to get dancers on stage and do a
Mhm.
performance for the city,
Mhm.
that kind of point in their journey?
I think because like you, Rachel, you're just birthing right this podcast, and
Yeah.
like doing something that is in your heart. And I think for young, artists out there that have a dream, I was very young when I was pretty young when Project Dance started. And I just want to encourage artists that if you think you're too young, or if you if you don't think you have it all together figured out, or maybe you have a dream and you're thinking that you need a certain amount of money to get started or something like that,
Hmm.
I would just say to consider all of those things, write all of those things down, but don't let any of those things stop you from taking steps towards your dream. Because if you sit back and wait to talk about it, share about it, have other people know about it, then you're delaying the time in which you're going to see it come to fruition.
Yeah. Yeah. Being kind of held back by.
Yeah, and those barriers and those things are important. Those It's really good if you're thinking about those things. But what the reason I say it is because if you're waiting, what will happen, especially because dreams and visions are from the Lord. And if,
Mhm.
if you have one, you can well bet it's probably something God's birthing in you. I would say go for it, because if there's something in your heart and it's not happening, He's probably going to ask someone else to do it. Right. So
Mhm. Yeah.
and so if he's asking you to do it, right? He's asking you to do it. He's not asking you to do it alone. He's definitely going to invite other people to come around your vision. And the thing with dreams and visions that are from the Lord is that you don't have all the pieces. And that's really scary,
Yeah.
because if you have a dream, you want to make sure you can make it happen. You can sort of orchestrate, right? Because you're responsible, and you're going to make sure you're responsible for the thing he's given you to do. But those visions do require other people. So it's just very much an image of how the body of Christ works, right? The hand, the foot, the arm, the leg, right? So
Mhm.
being open and realize, okay, I've got this vision and I've got this dream, but for Project Dance, it would have never been birthed without these non-dancers like my husband, who's a landscape architect, or my friend Larry, who's the IT guy who got that side of things going. So all of these people will come around your vision once you start talking about it, and you'll realize how integral those people are within that vision, and you'll see it
Mhm.
grow beautifully.
Yeah. Thank you for that encouragement. Definitely. I think will be really helpful for people to take that next step and not to be held back by what they don't know, but just to move forward. And that's something I'm learning too, is just take action, do the next thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's how you learn, that's how you grow, and it's beautiful.
Exactly. So, similar vein, but just one thing that I like to ask everyone is if, someone's just sitting across from you at the table over coffee or whatever, and you get a chance to speak to the artist who's listening on the other side of this, is there something on your heart that you'd like to share in general? It's kind of a similar question, but
Yeah.
yeah, just in general.
I'll share a couple things, and this is just things that I think about sometimes with art. And art is such an interesting, because it was given to us, like by the Lord, because God created art. It
Hmm.
has an eternal trajectory. Art is there moving and art is being perfect the way God created it, right? And we get to jump in, like whether it's singing or dancing or painting or whatever, we get to experience the beauty of God and what he's made. It's like this backdrop. It's like God has painted this amazing backdrop of dance or any kind of art you can think of. And so
Hmm.
there it is. And we're looking at it and we're saying, wow, God, that's so beautiful. And I would just caution dancers, don't try to go find where the top of that is, because anything God created continues to go forever. And so
Yeah.
it's such a huge freedom, because you can then dance to your very best. You can become the most excellent, knowing you never reach the very, very top of anything God created, because he's the ultimate, right? And so, but the beauty of it is that you can experience him through it. I think a
Mm.
lot of artists get caught up with perfectionism and wanting to be perfect and wanting to be so excellent and wanting to be the best, that they miss out on the freedom of the journey of just swimming with the Lord in something he created is so beautiful. And in that, once you kind of get into that realization, your expression of art actually becomes more beautiful.
Yeah.
And it becomes more excellent. Yeah. When you're freed up outside of yourself. Yeah. It's so freeing, and so otherwise it can be very stifling. The arts can be very stifling. And so I have found a lot of freedom in just recognizing when I stand at the bar and do plie that, Lord, thank you that you've given us ballet. It's so beautiful. And I identify with the alignment of your nature through port de bras or whatever. And I start to think about the Lord and how he's given us dance and how I can enjoy him through it. And then I stop thinking about what I look like in the mirror or what, or how high my leg goes today. Right. And really start to enjoy him. And then the last thing I'll share is that, and this goes also back to just those dreamers and those visionaries of really understanding, I think, what the arts are. And it's really like a bridge. I see the arts as a bridge. And I see artists as building that bridge. And in doing that, like when you go to a city and you see a bridge, you don't think, wow, what a beautiful bridge, right? I mean, unless you're like, in Pittsburgh or New York or, San Francisco, where the bridge is the thing you see. But, bridges just sort of get people from one place to another. And I never forget, one of the very first project dance intensives we did years ago was just at a little church in Florida. We went down to teach some classes. And as we were leaving, the pastor said to me, taking me like to the airport, she said, I tell you what, how about if you make sure you tell the world that we're out here, meaning the church. You keep telling the world that we're out here, and I will keep telling the church that you are out there.
Yeah.
And I thought,
cool.
That's it. That's it. She gets it. Like, the arts are there, dance is there to be a bridge towards something. And it's beautiful because it gives your bridge a purpose. It gives your artistry a purpose. If you recognize that you are this beautiful language to communicate, whether it's social injustice issues, whether it's, bringing people into reconciliation from the world to the church, so to speak, right? Or whatever that bridge is, it's so important. And it gives you kind of this groundedness and this purpose so that you're not wasting, right, this gift and this talent that you have obviously been given and graced to have, that you are really understanding the purpose of that. Because if you walk into a city and and there's no bridge to cross over to the other side, you're stuck. Right. And you can't get there. And so the arts and is that beautiful bridge. But in that, sometimes what happens is artists realize, I'm getting stepped on.
This will speak to people.
No, nobody sees me. Like, here I am holding up the weight of this bridge.
Right.
Nobody's paying for this bridge. Right.
So true.
Right.
But it does feel like that a lot, I'm sure. Yeah.
It does. Right. It feels like that as artists because usually when you're uniting people, the reason you're doing it is for the lack of understanding through which you're speaking. And you're using that bridge to then speak something that needs to be spoken. And so that is why artists need each other, because we need to be able to share with each other. Oh yeah, I know what that feels like to be stepped on and totally unappreciated or never paid or whatever it is. And we talk about those things and we build each other up. Through different forms like your podcast, like Project Dance, like Randy's Dance Intensive, like all of these things. That the reason we need them is because we need to understand one another so that we can speak truth to the world around us. It's not to come together to be a special elite group of artists with a capital A, but we're really coming together so that we can understand the truth of who we are, so that we can speak a united, voice to the world around us, so that they can actually dive into the arts and jump in with us so that we can celebrate that together.
Community is so key, super important. Thanks for helping to build literally a global network of community And it's really neat seeing a lot of relationships that I built through, obviously with Ben, but other people too, through Project Dance. And yeah, I love that community aspect. And I can totally see your heart in it. And that heart of the arts being a bridge between people, between ideas. So grateful for your influence in the world. And literally for this season, I think it's super crucial right now, especially. So
Thank you, Rachel.
Of course. So one fun question, I mean, they're all fun, I guess, hopefully, but one non-dance related question is, what is one of your favorite things right now?
Okay. So I am really actually loving, this is probably going to sound so silly, but I'm actually loving being in my kitchen and baking and being with my family. And I just think there's so many years where I just plowed and plowed and plowed. And now, because it wouldn't have happened otherwise, because of this pandemic.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I would have just kept going because there's so much to do, right?
Exactly.
And so taking inventory of what is right in front of me, my home, my family, my kids are amazing. I'm loving seeing them like grow right in front of me. And
that's so fun.
That's what I'm enjoying. You know, I'm taking it in and I'm savoring it because I know that this is temporary and I know that this moment's not going to last forever. And so I'm enjoying
I don't think
it.
It's silly. I think it's great.
I tell you, I have a garden now on my deck.
Oh, nice. Cool.
So I'm growing basil and rosemary. I've got tomatoes out there. I've got Ron's he's growing, right? Squash and snap peas and all the stuff on my deck. So
that's amazing. Love it. Yeah. Yes. I hope to have a garden someday. It's like a little dream for the future. So it'll be fun.
Yes. I can relate. It is fun. Yeah.
Totally. It's just life-giving, I think, too, to see things growing and getting to, I love being in the kitchen too. Baking is super fun. So totally right there with you right now.
Oh, good. Yes.
Yes. So how can people get in touch with you or learn more about Project Dance and what's going on?
So projectdance.com, you can visit our website, and if you send an email through Project Dance, it comes right to my desk. I would love to hear from anybody who would like to learn more about Project Dance. I'm on Facebook under my name, Cheryl Cutlip. You can definitely catch up with me there as well. Those are the two places that I frequent. I do have an Instagram account, but my daughter usually takes care of that.
Nice.
So if I'm not as active on Instagram, but Facebook is probably the best place to find me.
So. Perfect. Well, this has definitely been a gift and so much fun to get to hear from you and get to catch up with you. Thank you for sharing your heart and your vision for what the Lord is doing right now in the arts. And thank you for your encouragement to everybody that's listening. Absolutely, Rachel. Thank you so much for having me. Friends, wasn't Cheryl's story such an encouragement? I personally have had the opportunity to take part in multiple Project Dance events, and I loved hearing Cheryl's journey and her heart behind the event. You can find links from the show and the full show notes on our website. Become a monthly supporter of the podcast by joining our Patreon community. As a supporter, you get access to extra content that is only available for patrons. You can learn more at creativeimpactpodcast.com/PATREON. Don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter to be eligible to win our first ever giveaway. The giveaway winner will receive a beautiful Names of God calligraphy print from Caitlin Harbaugh at the Little Blue Desk. Next week, my guest for the show is founder of Artist House International, Lara Bianca Pilcher. Lara is an actress, singer, dancer, writer, and podcast host. I'm so excited to get to introduce her to you next week. Thank you for listening to the Creative Impact Podcast. The music for the show is produced by Michael Cash. Share the show with a friend, and I'll see you next week for my conversation with Lara Bianca Pilcher.